This week we're looking at the issue of soil carbon and ESGs from a state government agriculture department perspective, and I've got Graeme Anderson with us from Agriculture Victoria. Graeme, how are you, mate?
Hey Tim, how are you?
Not too bad. Now we're in front of your beautiful offices here in the city of Geelong.
Yep.
As always, if we want to find out about these things, we've got to come off the farm occasionally and come to the big smoke.
That's right.
You are all around the state. Tell us a little bit about your role.
Yep, so climate specialist with Agriculture Victoria, and I run our climate change program with AgVic. We do a lot of engagement with farmers, lots of extension events, a lot of packaging up of science, whether it's with the atmospheric science or whether it's with science on farming practice and soil carbon or trees or carbon sequestration, and really trying to work out how that stuff hits the ground. So there's a lot of policy and a lot of science in this space, but I guess our key areas on how do we help get that in the hands of farmers so they can get on with producing food and fibre, but find ways of doing it with less emissions and storing a bit more carbon along the way.
Well, I've been talking to a few farmers, and there's a few questions that are common to a lot of people.
Yep.
So let's try and dig into those a little bit as we go. How important is it for farmers to be carbon neutral by 2030?
I think there's been a lot of discussion around it, and I know
that's what a lot of people are really worried about.
MLA target, and actually we're running an on-farm emissions pilot at the moment where there's 250 farms going and doing a one-to-one sort of emissions audit and looking at emissions associated with what they're farming, but also the carbon that's being stored in their trees and soils. So the key learning from that is it's not easy to be carbon neutral, and probably we're sort of the more common advice is think about it. Yep, there's a lot of ambition to get to net zero by 2050, and like all changes in farming and agriculture, we can always get there, but we can't do it overnight. There's a lot that's needed and a lot of research and new practices that are going to be needed for us to, take these 5 and 10% emissions reductions off our total over the coming 30 years. So my advice to farmers is, there's the odd farm out there that has got to carbon neutral.
They're very rare though, aren't they?
They're rare, and they've done that over the last 30 years too. It's not like you can suddenly click your fingers and it'll happen. So we've got some farms that have planted up to 20% of their farm to lots of land care and farm forestry, and that's probably absorbing as much carbon at the moment as what the rest of their enterprise is emitting. But that is just that isn't the long-term solution either.
No. Now, a lot of people are saying, just plant trees and you'll be right.
Yeah.
But that's actually a massive trap, isn't it? I know certainly where I am, I've stopped planting trees because my local council, hello Shire of Yarra Ranges, won't let me cut down a dead tree.
Yep.
So it leaves me with an unmanageable mess in 20 or 30 years' time. And that's something that people need to be aware of, is that their local regulations might not match maybe state, territory, or international market goals.
Yeah, well that's right, that stuff can always change, and I know with a lot of farmers that's something they're really aware of about, if they're putting in portion of the farm to trees or vegetation, making sure it fits in with the whole farm plan.
And if you're a farmer, you've got to be able to use the trees as an asset at some point, don't you?
Yeah, and we see some of the farmers that have planted the most trees, quite a few have got farm forestry in there where they're looking at, that right from the word go, these trees are going to be managed and used as a future timber resource, and then they'll be replanted so it's a sort of move into a plant, grow, harvest, replant, regrow, harvest, and it's a good cycle because each time they're growing another crop of trees, they're getting carbon from the atmosphere. When they harvest it, the trees, the carbon in that timber goes into wood, goes into houses or furniture, but then they can grow another crop of carbon. And so
they're locking up carbon because they're actually producing a product rather than letting the tree just sit and rot in the paddock.
That's right. So over 100 years, you could have, say, 5 rotations of trees, which 5 crops of carbon out of the atmosphere into trees, put into wood, and into making things society needs. And we've got examples of that too, even with straw. Up around Bendigo, they put straw into panels.
Yes.
And so some farmers, some years they've got excess straw, and rather than do stubble burning, the straw goes to the local panel maker, makes building panels. It's a beautiful product. That then goes into buildings, and so that farmer next year can grow that crop again, and you can see there's a flow of carbon out of the atmosphere, and into wood products, and you can do it again.
It's allowing the farmer to value add a waste product.
Farmer gets value add. There's regional jobs. Farmer gets some income from something that we consider was a bit of a waste. And the beauty of it is you can keep doing it. Like, it is an enduring income, taking carbon out of the atmosphere, putting it into something useful.
Now, to meet international market specifications and to meet specifications for finance, farmers have to be able to prove that they have a certain number of soil carbon credits. They have to meet the ESGs. There's some actors out there who are going around saying to farmers, look, this is just too complicated for you to do. You're too busy. We'll do it for you. We'll just take 30% of your carbon credits. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, it's a pretty hot topic at the moment. Like, I think mostly longer term for food and fibre, and all of those involved in supply chain, like the exporters that we're talking to, or banks or others, most of them are actually only after that, all the businesses they're working with are taking climate change seriously and have a longer term plan for reducing emissions. So that's where that comes in. But as you know, in Australia we've got, and other areas, there are carbon credit schemes and carbon markets. And,
there's industries trying to offset their dirty carbon onto farmers.
And there's lots of people with big emissions liabilities that they're scratching their head trying to work out how do we solve this. And for some, they're saying, oh, look, over there in agriculture,
there's an opportunity.
There's land, there's soil carbon, and there's trees. Maybe we can, get agriculture to do some of their dirty work, as you say.
So you guys have got a list of questions to ask an actor in this space, and we're going to put a link to those in the description so people can inquire more thoroughly from these people that come on farm and suddenly want to do something for nothing, because in my experience, you don't get nothing for nothing.
That's right. I was always know what you're getting into. So we tend to say that more carbon on farms is a great thing, and farmers have got a really important asset, because we do have some emissions liabilities associated with agriculture, but we also have a land that can increase what we store on it from a carbon point of view with land care, and lots of land care farms have done that over the last 20 years. Other people don't have it and they want a piece of it. But that's where they come in with sometimes quite complex agreements or long-term contracts, and just
be really wary of that.
Be wary of that, and we've got questions to ask before you sell your carbon to someone else. We've got a fact sheet.
So check that out in the description, guys. Go and have a look at the fact sheet.
Go and have a look at that. So there's some really big things. So if someone is trying to buy the carbon off you as a farmer, often it requires a long-term contract or agreement, and sometimes what's actually happening is it's a property right transaction. So it's not like you're just selling some wool or selling some beef or selling something that you do as normal.
So it's like selling a water license.
It's got property implications, because that carbon is buried either, if it's a soil contract, it's under your soil, or if it's carbon in trees, it's the carbon. So someone is declaring an interest in your land.
So it's almost like these industries taking a caveat over your property.
It is like that, and actually often with those contracts they need to, if you've got a mortgage with the bank, often they had to be notified as well. So if there's any mortgage over the land when there's a carbon contract, the bank has to consent as well. So it's not anything where that's happening. Make sure you're getting good legal advice before you sign it. And there's other key questions we ask about. Just make sure you know that carbon sequestration, whether it's in trees that you plant or in soil carbon, it's not an ongoing revenue stream. So what happens is you can take a piece of land that's got low soil carbon or no trees on it, and you can do some things that improve it and add more carbon. But over time it reaches a new equilibrium.
Well, Richard Eckhart last week was telling us that you'll only get to about 4% soil carbon in good soil, and then you've maxed out.
Then you've maxed out. So while you're increasing from a low carbon to a higher carbon base, and then you hit your new equilibrium, while that's increasing, you have the potential for carbon credits.
Yes.
But at some stage in the future, that will then plateau.
No more credits.
So we talk with farmers who planted a lot of trees and did a lot of land care work 30 years ago. As all of their trees and their soils and everything have improved, they've absorbed a lot of carbon out of the atmosphere. So it's a fantastic thing.
Yeah.
But also,
they're not going to get carbon
credits. As those trees have matured and their soils now have sort of got to that maximum, that annual rate of carbon they're sequestering has really slowed. So if they were relying on that for carbon credits, most of the carbon credits is on what they've already done. The future income stream from carbon credits has dried up. And the other bit to be wary of is for farmers is, you know, if you're signing a long-term contract for anything, it's important to know what the market might do. So if you're getting paid at today's rate, Tim, say, you know, $20 or $30 a tonne, someone's asking you to store that there for free for the next 25 years.
It might be worth 100 times that.
Well, that's right. And so if there is any liabilities in future because you've had a bushfire or something and it's not there, that's a pretty important thing about who's going to fill that gap. And the important thing about the soil carbon that you might sell today, it's not the same tonne that will be there in 25 years because carbon cycles around.
Now, this comes to an important point as well. We're equating a 25 to 30 year carbon cycle on a farm with offsetting, if we sell our carbon credits, carbon emissions from digging up million-year-old fossil fuels. To my mind, that just doesn't make sense.
No, you're right. Yeah, I agree. There's a really big difference. Like, you know, while the valuable opportunity that agriculture has is, yes, we can take carbon out of the atmosphere.
Yes.
But a lot of farmers are asking a really sensible question about, listen, we've got our own emissions in agriculture. We'd actually like to use any carbon gains from our own land against our own emissions,
exactly.
and while we find, you know, innovations to reduce our emissions at source. Now, of course, there are other high emitting sectors out there that are thinking we'd like to actually grab hold of that carbon now.
Yes, and greedily grab it.
Yeah, that's right. And so we'll see more of that in future, where others are wanting to you know, work out as part of their long-term strategy how they get hands on more carbon. But I guess the key question and challenge, I think, for you know, everywhere when it comes to land and agriculture is, yes, land, it is good to add more carbon to the land and healthier soils and more trees in the landscape, but it's no free kick. It's only something that helps us and for a while, and the ultimate is reducing emissions at source. So there's a risk that some, you know, you'd hate to spend the next 20 years where some large emitters used land to offset their emissions while as part of their plan just to keep increasing emissions. Well, you know, so I think it's pretty important. And I know, speaking with experts like Richard Eckard, he's sort of saying, well, there's probably, you know, a quarter or a third of agricultural emissions which we don't actually have a solution to. So across, you know, Australia's food and fibre production, we're probably going to need, you know, that offsetting potential of carbon on land for food production. So be careful. We'd hate to see it all just be shipped off somewhere else.
Let's say we're a really good farmer. Let's say we recognise that carbon is fertility. And let's say that we've been doing that already and we want to continue doing that because most good farmers want to do this anyway.
That's right. Exactly,
Now there's another layer of paperwork, reporting and declarations of data. Now there's a few issues come out of that. How is the burden of work associated with proving that you're being carbon neutral or getting close to carbon neutral going to impact the small family farm? They've already got huge amounts of data collection and reporting for their payroll, for all of their quality assurance programs for the various different buyers. I mean, every supermarket has a different quality assurance program because I just can't agree. So to access markets, there's already an enormous workload on farmers. How much more do you think this ESGs and carbon reporting is going to add onto the shoulders of already weary farmers?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the key bit about the carbon credits side of things is that farmers have to volunteer to be in part of the, like if they want to establish a carbon project with a carbon aggregator or broker, that's farmers' choice. Now most farmers I work with are choosing not to do that.
Don't want to do that, no, because that means giving up some of their carbon.
They're saying we prefer the carbon gains to be you know, held ourselves. So at least, you know, no farmers being forced to be involved in getting into the carbon credit side of things. So but if any that do are interested, because they get a knock on the door, just make sure they know what they're getting into. But I guess with supply chain or with banks asking and all of that, I think
because
we'll see
ownership
more
of data is an issue as well. So who should people be giving their data to?
Well, I think ultimately it's the farmer's choice about who they share their data with. And what we're sort of finding, good examples of it are where farmers might have benchmarking programs happening with their core exporter, and it's all part of just showing, listen, Australia's green, you know, high quality, clean and green food production. And most farmers saying, I'm happy to share that to demonstrate that our stuff internationally is top quality stuff and it's clean and green. So you can sort of see that emissions might be just another thing that's added to that. And what we certainly find with the on-farm emissions audits happening at the moment with the pilot is that a lot of times farmers have got business benchmarking stuff happening to monitor longer term performance.
Yes.
Often you've got 95% of the data you need there, just scraping that data and adding an extra column to have an emissions performance line there as well. And most at the moment, all that's being asked is saying, understand your number for emissions, have a bit of a plan about what you're doing that can reduce that over time. And I often say to farmers, it's not just the responsibility of farmers to solve this alone. Everyone involved, from our input suppliers, our banks, our processors, our exporters, all of them have skin in the game here.
So farmers are buying fertiliser from a large petrochemical company. They've got every right to ask them what their plan is to decrease their carbon so that they can put it on their report.
And for example, like if there is really low emissions or net zero emissions fertiliser, a farmer can't do that unless someone's manufactured it somewhere. So
it's time for farmers to start exercising a little bit of their might. And push back on this.
That's right. And what we've found with the emissions pilot is farmers are asking that stuff, and they're saying, well, because it's when they do their first sort of emissions audit, they go, what's this scope 3 emissions? And it enters this sort of world of a new language. But it's basically the emissions associated with all the upstream stuff, and farmers don't have control over it. Although in time you can say, well, if there's two products of equal cost and one's got half the emissions, I'll go for that one. So along the supply chain, you get more people saying, I'll have more of that one and less of that. So it's probably how it'll play out. So I wouldn't be too overawed if I was a farmer. It's just about having a long-term plan. There's a lot of work and bright minds being put into this. Like, humans are good when we focus enough attention and investment to solve certain things. So there'll be solutions coming on stream in the next sort of decade or two that will be tested, and when they work, farmers adopt them. And when you just look automatically at agriculture, every sort of 10, 20 years we look back, and because of improved genetics, improved systems, we're more efficient at what we do. We go, look, to produce that tonne of food, we've reduced the emissions by about 30%. That's without trying. That's just because
that's just through better genetics and better efficiency, which makes more money anyway.
That's right.
So Graeme, the key messages out of this discussion today seem to be farmers should hold on to their carbon, be very wary of carbon credit schemes, particularly those that seek to offset dirty industries. Farmers should be taking some records.
Good records,
and at this stage, the record keeping requirements for carbon aren't terribly high.
No, that's right.
So that's good. Get involved early, I suppose, is your messaging, isn't it?
That's right. And you'd only share it where you think it's in your interest. So the farmers we've been working with, they're saying, if we've got a core partner we work with and they export and they're asking that, we've got skin in the game. We're happy to share that info with them because it actually helps demonstrate we're low emissions producers. But if someone's after it and you can't see the value of it, then don't share
Hold on to it. And I suppose the last point to make is there are people out there who can give you advice on this, and you're one of them.
That's right. Very happy to share any info and help people talk through it.
Mate, thank you very much. Hopefully that's answered a few questions. I've still got some nagging doubt in my mind about all of this and how it's going to play out, particularly for smaller scale farmers. But you did make a point earlier off camera that sometimes it's the smaller farmers that do a better job of this carbon stuff than the large farms.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting that over time there's always been people keen and large corporates get involved in agriculture, but at the heart of it, whether they do it well or not, it's normally limited by the capacity of the humans and the people managing the land.
And there's nothing like a person that owns their own land to manage their land properly, is there?
That's right, exactly right. And so we certainly find, really, a lot of the farmers we deal with are sort of large family farms or corporate farms that, you've still got to have really skilled people who are on there who are keeping everything running schmicko. That's a human task. And so, while sometimes, corporate agriculture has big plans, the ultimate key is you've got to have good people running that land sustainably and growing what the world wants. You've got to be paid, grow what the world's paying us handsomely for. There's a bright future for ag, but we've got plenty of issues we've got to get on top of, but you know, with good science and good application we could get there.
Well, we've got people like you making sure that we get these messages across, which is a good thing. Guys, make sure if you are thinking about getting involved in carbon credits or trading your carbon, you check out the resource in the description below, because there are a lot of traps to it. And Graeme, thank you very much for your time today. Good work.
Cheers. You know, you might sell it today, but at some point in future, someone's going to come and get it.
Sorry, mate, we're in an interview currently.
What kind of interview is it?
It's for my YouTube channel. Why? What's the problem, mate?
Oh, no, I'm just interested. Like.
Oh, okay. No worries. I tell you what, you can do me a favour. Come around here. You can have a look at it through here if you like. All right. Just please don't touch the back of it. Thank you, mate. No, you're welcome, mate. Where were we?
Well, Matt.
And I suppose the last point that we need to make is, oh God, what was it? I was about to, oh God, my brain's fried.
That's all right, you had a big week.